Who's excited about being here on the Shabbat, on the high Sabbath, man? Woo! Oh, better not yell on this.
You didn't have to do that. We can't hear you thing on that one.
No, sorry. I'll try not to yell on the microphone. Man, words can't describe how excited I am to be here. It's been like the build-up, right? All year, just waiting and getting prepared and buying projectors and just trying to get things ready and and getting here. And I know many of you, I've heard some of the stories. I mean, the battles, enemy trying to throw things at you so you couldn't come or wouldn't come, and just so many things. Hurricanes. Had a few hurricanes. But just miraculous intervention, though, even like with Sherry's story. And we're going to have some testimony time this week, too. And so please bring your testimonies. And Brenda in Houston, no floodwaters, okay? I mean, just boom. Just
Right at the door, but it stayed there. That's right.
We had a sister in Florida, no floodwaters at her house.
All right.
So we know that we serve the Creator, right, of everything. And that's what we're here to do this week. Is we're to serve Him, and we're to join Him and meet with Him, and that's why we're here. That's why you've come, to be with the family, and you're my family. I mean, more so than my natural family, you're my family. My family doesn't call and email me. My family doesn't. I don't know if they pray for me. They say they do. So you're my family. When I think of family, I see your faces. Okay? And so I know He's preparing us. He's getting us ready because we are the family. And we are going to be with Him. And it's going to be an awesome, awesome time. Do we have to go through some things first? Yeah. A few hurricanes? You betcha. More to come probably, right? But at the end of this, it's going to be worth the wait. It's going to be worth the effort. And so I've entitled this today. Now, these messages this week they're all leading us somewhere. And so this is a series. I'm not big on series, but it worked out because we had time. So today is called The Frequency of Heaven. The frequency of heaven. And what we're trying to do, we spoke last night for you guys that were here, we're trying to get somewhere, aren't we? It's the story of the bride. It's the story of restoration. And that's what Sukkot is, isn't it? It's the story of restoration. It's the bride coming back in the ingathering feast, celebrating at the wedding feast. That's what our hearts long for. I don't want to be left out. I want to be in the wedding feast. I want to be the bride. I don't want to be outside. Outside the gates is not going to be a nice place. And so, the part of that is we have to understand, and if you guys out there, can you keep the children, Matthew said put duct tape on them. I'm nicer than that. Chained up, I guess. Give them water, though. But, what we have to understand, guys, is we're going somewhere, and even us, even that we're here, it's not by chance you're here. Yah has brought you here. He's opened the truth to you, and you're here. But there's still more truth for us to understand. There's still more deception to be pulled off our eyes. I mean, we're in a wicked, wicked world amongst a wicked, wicked generation. And the enemy is trying to bring us into his beat, the frequency of the enemy's camp. And so we're talking today about how to make sure you stay with the heartbeat of heaven, because if you want to be the bride, there's the harlot, there's the bride. I searched scripture for the middle lady. Couldn't find her. There's the harlot, there's the bride. And so for so long in my Christian walk, I would sing songs about the bride, and I'm the bride, and I had a harlot's heart, man. And many of you know my testimony. And I've known many of your testimonies. You were the same way. We didn't have a heart to obey. We didn't have a heart to serve Him. And so He is transforming us. Is He finished? No, not yet. Is anyone perfect here? Not yet. But He's perfecting us. He's perfecting us. And so the frequency of heaven, staying aligned to the heartbeat of the Creator. I'm going to walk out here and get some my water. It's very important that we do that. So the 7 feasts, some of you, this is your first feast. And so just a real quick timeline. The 7 feasts of Yah reveal the timeline of our spiritual journey. We're on this journey. We start with Passover, the salvation through Messiah's blood, bringing us into unleavened bread, the 7 days of separation from this world. There's a theme. First fruits. Yeshua accepted as the first fruits of many. He's our first fruits. We're fruits too. We're fruity. We will be presented at Shavuot with Him to the Father. 2 loaves. 2 risen loaves. Yeshua, His bride. Empowered by the Holy Spirit, right? Yom Teruah, the walls of Jericho fall down, death destroyed.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah, that's coming. That's where we're going next. The first 4 have been fulfilled. The last 3, that's what we're talking about. Yom Kippur, atonement. Yeshua, our atoning sacrifice. We don't mourn as others do. I mean, on Day of Atonement, we celebrated. We had a good time. He is our atonement. Once and for all, sat down. Do you guys realize that? Sat down. Sat down. Sukkot, the marriage supper of the Lamb, the 7-day wedding feast. Can you guys hear us out here? You good? Okay. The 7-day wedding feast. And so that's what we're going to talk about this week, is really just you don't start too young. I mean, so this is for all age groups, just to listen, because there's no alternatives, guys. I mean, for us, there's no alternatives. So there's 3 rehearsals still to come to be reality. We had Yom Teruah, the Feast of Trumpets. Yom Teruah, the battle cry and acclamation of joy. So that you'll see that Yom Teruah means both a battle cry and an acclamation of joy. Just to touch on this. So Yah will soon judge the gods of this world, while at the same time delivering those who were once harlots. Rahab, right? Who have become his bride through the scarlet cord. That's the only thing that's going to get us out of Jericho. I mean, Jericho's the moon city. It's the moon god. It's the system of this world. The only thing that's going to get you out of it is if he sees that scarlet cord. That's your salvation. You don't have that, your walls are going to fall down. Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement. Yeshua brings his bride to his side and announces our jubilee. We return to our inheritance. Our land restored. Our inheritance is sure. That's coming. Matthew 5:5, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. And part of why I like to do PowerPoints is because we go through a lot of scriptures and you can kind of read them instead of trying to flip through them. So if you're good with taking notes, I'll give you the scripture references. You can write them down, make a note beside it if you can't turn there. I'm going to move not quickly, but there's a lot of information. Feast of Sukkot. So after walking for 6 days upon the earth, we're gathered to Zion at the ingathering for the wedding feast. The Feast of Ingathering. We will tabernacle with Yeshua in a temporary period before we enter the 8th day. So that's kind of just a recap of where we're going. Zephaniah 3:14. Zephaniah 3:14 says, sing, O daughter of Zion. Shout, O Israel. Be glad and rejoice with all your heart, O daughter of Jerusalem. Yahweh hath taken away thy judgments. He hath cast out thine enemy. The King of Israel, even Yahweh, is in the midst of thee. Thou shalt not see evil any more. In that day it shall be said to Jerusalem, fear thou not, and to Zion, let not thine hands be slack. Yahweh thy God in the midst of thee is mighty. He will save. He will rejoice over thee with joy. He will rest in his love. He will joy over thee with singing. Can you imagine that? He will joy over you with singing. The creator of everything loves you that much to bring you here at a rehearsal to prepare you. I will gather them that are sorrowful for the solemn assembly, who are of thee, to whom the reproach of it was a burden. Do you understand what that's saying? We read it again. I will gather them that are sorrowful for the solemn assembly. That's you. What are you here today doing? You're joining at a solemn assembly. That word assembly is moed. So you're here at the appointed times. You long for the appointed times. The bride longs for the appointed times, the Messiah. And so you also, to whom the reproach of it was a burden. So those who it's a reproach, you carry that burden. How many of your friends and family, what, you're keeping the feast? That's dead. Old Testament. What do you got to do that? That's gone. You don't have to do that. Okay. My heart longs to do this. I burden that. It's a burden. So that's what he says. I'm going to gather you that are burdened because of this. I'm going to bring you in. Behold, at that time, 19, at that time I will undo all that afflict thee, and I will save her that halteth, and gather her that was driven out, and I will get them praise and fame in every land where they have been put to shame. I will get them praise and fame in every land where they were put to shame. That's my God. He's going to lift you up. He's going to say, listen, this is my bride. You messed with the wrong one. I wouldn't want to be that guy. 20, at that time I will bring you again. At that time I will bring you again, even in the time that I gather you. For I will make a name and a praise among all people. I'll make you a name and a praise among all people of the earth, when I turn back your captivity before your eyes, saith Yahweh. Sukkot. Trumpets. The Jubilee pronounced on Yom Kippur. It's all coming. It's real. It's reality. This isn't just something to do. I know that for you that are here, you get that. Some of you, you're new. You're getting that. But you're here. It's by the Spirit of the living God. It's not by chance. We don't believe in chance. Amen? So why 7 feasts? And I pared this down. I was up this morning early, deleting stuff because there's just too much. I really need about a week for this. So we're doing it in a day. Why 7 feasts? I call it the law of 7. The law of 7 keeps us in perfect alignment with the clock, the calendar, and the frequency of heaven. That's why 7. 7,000 years of time have been set for man on this earth. 6,000 for working out our salvation. We'll enter rest on the 7th. There's scripture that backs it up all over the place. Genesis 2, you're familiar with this, starting in verse 2. And on the 7th day, Elohim ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the 7th day from all his work which he had made. And Elohim blessed the 7th day and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work which Elohim created and made. He blessed it. That means to kneel, or to kneel down. He blessed it. The creator of heaven and earth kneeled down. He took the time and he said, I bless that. Don't you want to spend time with someone that could squash you like an ant, but kneels down and gets in your presence and says, this day, I'm in your presence with you. Sanctified means to appoint, bid, consecrate, dedicate. So this is the creator of heaven and earth, y'all. I'm not going to argue with him. If he says this is the time, I'm going to bless and sanctify. I don't care what the world says. I don't care what anybody says. They can say, well, he changed it to Sunday. It's not in Scripture, and it's not prophesied. You guys know that. Sabbath day stands. It's covenant. It was in covenant before law ever was given at Sinai. So it's a big deal. It's a big deal to him. Exodus 20, verse 8 says, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Remember is to mark as to recognize. To keep. Mark it. Recognize it. Keep it holy. Why? Why? Because he does. And he said to. That's all I need to know. And he made me. And I'm just the clay. I'm not going to argue with the potter. We see 4, and we're getting into the frequency pattern and the time frame and the clock and the heartbeat of the Creator, guys, and what he's put into us. You're going to love this. Maybe you've heard some of this before. So 4 being the number of creation, we see placing the Sabbath as the 4th commandment links us directly to the number of creation. Therefore, when we remember and observe and we keep it, we are aligning ourselves with the Creator of all things. We become right in alignment with what he wants for us on the earth. It's not everything. It doesn't mean that that's all you do, but that's where you begin. I mean, that's where he brought us. He brought us the Sabbath. How many of you guys entered the covenant by seeing the Sabbath? Raise your hands. Okay. Who entered by the clean and unclean laws? Okay. That's my point. I meet hardly anybody that says, I read about not eating pork and I decided to join the covenant. No, when we saw the scriptures open up and it was all about the Sabbath. We read Leviticus 23 is what did it. And it just hit me like a ton of bricks. I'll never forget the day. But we see the number of creation. There's 4 cardinal points, north, south, east, and west, 4 seasons, spring, summer, fall, winter, 4 elements, earth, fire, water, and air. So we see this number, and I believe that's why he placed everything in perfect order, and 4 being the number of creation. Exodus 31:13, starting in 13, Exodus 31:13 says, Speak thou also unto the children of Israel, saying, Verily my Sabbaths you shall keep, for it is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that ye may know that I am Yah that doth sanctify you. He gives you the reason right there. Did you catch it? That you may know that I am Yahweh that doth sanctify you. You shall keep the Sabbath therefore, for it is holy unto you. Every one that defileth shall surely be put to death. For whosoever doth any work on it, thou shalt be cut off from among his people. The Sabbath day was important to the Father. Guess what? It still is. You could do a lot of things under the law. You could kill someone. But you broke the Sabbath and you died. Why? Did you ever wonder why such a harsh punishment for picking up sticks on the Sabbath day? Because it's teaching us something. Every week it's about you being in the presence of the Creator. Because one day, if you're not learning and being trained by this, one day, if you get out of frequency, you get out of depth and range and you lose your character along the way. You lose who you are. You start following the enemy's time clock. Guess what happens to you? It's eternal death. You're gone. That's why it was such a harsh punishment that the Sabbath defiling carried. A couple things here to note. The word keep there in the Hebrew is hedge about, guard, protect, attend to. And we're going to come back to that in a little bit. Keep, hedge about, guard, protect it. I mean, that's strong. I mean, Kevin, what would you do for Jeremiah if I said, man, guard him? You would protect him with your life, right? This is the word here. This is another thing here, sign. It's a sign. Keep it as a sign. That means a signal, a flag, or a beacon. Signal, flag, a beacon. Well, I mean, do you see my flag over my head right now? He does. Do you see my beacon? He does. He sees yours too. You're here on the high Shabbat. He looks down on the earth and he looks for the people that are gathered in his name. He looks for the people that aren't, out doing the worldly things on the Sabbath day, who aren't just doing what they want to do on his holy day. He looks for those people. He looks for that beacon, and he goes, "That's my kid. That's my kid." It's awesome. Defileth, that word means wound, dissolve, profane. He does not want you to wound, dissolve it, and profane it. Dissolve means to just dissolve it until it's gone. That's what we've seen in the earth, haven't we? I mean, for the most part, Sabbath is Sunday, right? You've heard about the Sunday laws and all. There's been attempts in history. We'll talk about it. But one thing I want to get back to is that what really started getting me to think about what the Sabbath is really for. And this is, if you read Exodus 31, I mean, Yah's given all the covenant to Moses. He's given the law, and he's given the Torah to Moses. And like at the end of this, chapter 31, before it transitions, it's like the last thing he tells his son. It's the last thing he tells his son. What's the last thing you would tell your son? Jay, if you had to tell your son, you're going to not see your son for a while, and you've been talking about all kinds of things with your son, and man, you want to tell the last thing to your son. What do you think it's going to be?
Tell him to serve Yeshua with all his heart, mind, soul, and strength, honestly.
Okay, so you would tell your son that most important thing, right? In your heart. You'd be like, okay, I saved this for the last, son. And if you don't do anything else, I want you to really hear this. I want you to keep and guard the Sabbath. Why? So that you will know that I am Yahweh who sanctifies, cleanses you. Because what happens if you forget that? What happens if you don't know that he is Yah who cleanses you? Well, Romans 1:20 gives you, Romans 1 period, but even creation knows. So Romans 1, starting in 20, it says, "For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made. Even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse, because that when they knew Elohim, they glorified him not as Elohim, neither were they thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened. Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools." What did they do to become fools? It says it right there in verse 21. When they knew him, so at one point they knew him. They glorified him not. How do you glorify Yahweh? By doing what he tells you to do, right? You obey his commands. And so when he gives you that one last thing, Jay, you got to listen to this one last thing, man. If you forget everything I've told you today, I mean, we've gone through a lot of stuff, right? You got them on the stones, check them out, but you got to make sure you don't forget this. Romans 8:19, "For the earnest expectation of the creature waiteth for the manifestation of the sons of Elohim." The creation knows. The creation knows. It's in the creation. The laws of 7, the Sabbath law, keeps us in sync. Keeping the Sabbaths keeps us in sync with the Master. The 7 feasts, the 7 also the Sabbaths, are the yearly rehearsals of our coming back into the garden as his bride. That's what it's all about. It keeps us in sync. Our bodies are in sync to the Creator's clock, and we're going to talk about some things that science has proven just in the last 30 years. And it's a huge field, and they're just looking into it. Has anyone heard about the circadian rhythms? Circadian rhythms, okay? Circadian rhythms is any biological process that displays an endogenous, entrainable oscillation of about 24 hours. These 24-hour rhythms are driven by a circadian clock. They've been widely observed in plants, animals, fungus, and cyanobacteria, or cyanobacteria, however you say that, cyanobacteria. The term circadian comes from the Latin circa, meaning around, and diem, or a day, meaning a day. So, about a day. The formal study of biological temporal rhythms, such as daily, tidal, weekly, seasonal, and annual rhythms, is called chronobiology. We don't have a week to just stay on chronobiology, but I'm telling you, there's so much research. It is amazing what Yahweh put in His creation. Even creation knows, guys. But we get so foolish that we want to think we start worshiping sticks and stones. Amazing. So I had a real cool thing to show you, but he can't see it. But the circadian rhythms in humans, you can just Google this later. Don't do it now, because circadian rhythms in humans, and it's in all. I mean, we're all there. We're all kind of at the same. We're in sync together with this clock. It's kind of wild, but 12 o'clock midnight. So at 2 a.m., humans reach their deepest sleep state. By 4:30, you have your lowest body temperature. 6:45 a.m. is your sharpest blood pressure rise. 7:30, your melatonin and recreation stops, or secretion, sorry, melatonin secretion stops. At 10 o'clock a.m. is your highest alertness. You hit noon, 2:30, best coordination. 3:30, your fastest reaction time. So I'm kind of slow right now, but by 3:30, I'm catching a fly with my Mr. Miyagi hand. It takes me a little bit, right? 5 o'clock, the greatest cardiovascular efficiency and muscle strength. That's when I'll start running. Not today. 6:30 is the highest blood pressure. By 7 p.m., your highest body temperature. By 9 o'clock, your melatonin secretion starts. And guess what? It happens again. Every 24-hour cycle, day in, day out, day in, day out. Why? Because the Creator put His creation in sync to the heartbeat of heaven. Chronobiology is a field of biology that examines periodic phenomena in living organisms and their adaptation to solar and lunar related rhythms. These cycles are known as biological rhythms. Chronobiology comes from the ancient Greek chronos, meaning time, and biology, which pertains to the study of science of life. The related terms chronomics and chronome have been used in some cases to describe either the molecular mechanisms involved in chronobiological phenomena or the more quantitative aspects of chronobiology, particularly where a comparison of cycles between organisms is required. That's a mouthful. Chronobiology. It's a new field. It's really wild what they've found. So, the chronobiology is that aspect of biology concerned with the timing of biological events, to kind of put it in layman's terms. Especially repetitive or cyclic phenomena in individual organisms. Your body clock, it's so repetitive. Day in, day out, week in, week out, month in, month out, year in, year out. And we're in sync to different times. And you're going to understand that later. So, biological rhythms in psychiatry. They had a symposium called the Biological Rhythms in Psychiatry Symposium. And you want to hear this. This is Professor Anna Adams. She says, during the last decades, the study of the circadian rhythmic expression associated to major health problems has been a growing research area. The findings of circadian rhythmic impairments in several mental disorders related to poor therapeutic responses and more relapses is of great theoretic interest with relevant clinical contributions. Currently, there is no doubt about the importance to take into account rhythmic impairments in psychiatric disorders such as major depression, bipolar disorder, addiction, with and without mental disorders, given that it provides benefits in the clinical management of patients. The individual difference in circadian rhythmicity, namely circadian typology or chromotype, morning, neither, and evening type, has been demonstrated to be a protective factor, morning type, or a risk factor, evening type, to develop unhealthy habits and more serious psychiatric symptomatology, which gets worse, the social and occupational roles of these individuals. The present symposium will discuss the current hypothesis in order to delineate the current state of knowledge on this question. The chronobiological approaches promoting the rhythmic synchronization will be presented. Such approaches can be incorporated easily into both preventative and therapeutic interventions in mental health. The clinicians should incorporate circadian rhythmicity. So they're telling you, science is saying, you guys got to pay attention to your body clock. It means so much. Why? Because y'all put it in you for a reason. So this circadian rhythmicity in addiction, I mean, I'm just giving you, scratching the surface. There's so much. The world, if the world would come back into the Creator's frequency, we'd be fully restored, right? Well, that's where we're going. And we're trying to bring them along. Guys, come back. Get in line. Get in sync, right? Follow the Master, because He's going this way. Don't follow the world and its system. Don't listen to that. Come here. That's where we're going. Recent chronobiological studies show that drug consumption has a negative effect on circadian and rhythmic expression. Circadian rhythm may even disappear in extreme cases, which suggests a lesser quality of the wake and sleep periods. Moreover, some circadian genes, clock period, may be involved as biological risk factors in drug addictions. It's a mouthful. I was a doper when I was a kid, and I know my circadian clock was way off. So, mood disorders. They did some studies on mood disorders. There was a clinical study from Butcher, Manika, and Hooley, 2004. If you want the notes, Butcher, Manika, and Hooley. I can give you these slides later. Mood disorders and biological rhythms. As previously discussed, the circadian clock is responsible for controlling sleep patterns. Melatonin secretion from this region of the brain actually induces sleep. Commonly depressed patients experience a wide variety of sleep disorders. It should come as little surprise then that there is a connection between disruptions of the circadian cycle and depressive disorders. Generally, a decreased amount of deep sleep per night comes just before the onset of depression. Therefore, a drastic change in sleep schedule caused by extensive occurrences of jet lag or multiple shift changes may result in a disruption of circadian rhythm function. In these instances, it is possible for the circadian clock to induce REM sleep 15 to 20 minutes earlier in the sleep cycle, resulting in decrease in the amount of deep sleep and ultimately leading to the beginning stages of depression. So science is proving this out. In the last 20 to 30 years, the research is all pointing to there's a Creator. And He's made us to do this certain thing, these functions, and we got to pay attention. And most of them aren't paying attention. They're still like amazed by it, and they're trying to figure it all out. But some of them are waking up. Well, then it gets even more interesting, because in the last more recent realms of the studies of chronobiology, you've got the study of the Circaseptan. Have you heard of Circaseptan? Circaseptan is now the 7-day body clock. Okay? Circaseptan, meaning weekly. Circa, meaning about, right? Circadian. Septum, dies, 7 days. Septan, 7 days, recurring every 7th day. So recurring every 7th day. So Circaseptan is a 7-day body clock. Did you guys get that? Circaseptan cycles. Now we'll talk about Circaseptan cycles. This is from Susan Perry and Jim Davison, The Secrets of Our Body Clocks. Y'all with me so far? A 7-day cycle has been found in the fluctuations of blood pressure, acid content in the blood, red blood cells, heartbeat, oral temperature, female breast temperature, urine chemistry, and volume. The ratio between two important neurotransmitters, norepinephrine and epinephrine, and the rise and fall of several body chemicals such as the stress-coping hormone cortisol. In fact, weekly rhythms appear easiest to detect when the body is under stress, such as when it's defending itself against a virus, bacterium, or other harmful intruder. For example, cold systems, which are really signs of the body defending itself against the cold virus, last about a week. Circaseptan. They're on a 7-day cycle. Usually, chickenpox symptoms, a high fever and small red spots, usually appear almost exactly 2 weeks after exposure to the illness. Circaseptan. So the Circaseptan rhythm is a cycle consisting of 7 days in which many biological processes of life resolve. From this same study I just mentioned to you, the 7-day week not established by culture, because you have some of the scientists arguing, and haven't they? You've heard that. Well, the 7th day is just, it's religious. I mean, you've done it because they did it in time, it was all religion. Not so fast. Check this out. At first glance, it might seem that weekly rhythms developed in response to the 7th day week imposed by human culture thousands of years ago. However, this theory doesn't hold once you realize that plants, insects, and animals other than humans also have weekly cycles. Biology, therefore, not culture, is probably at the source of our seventh-day week. All creation speaks of his glory, doesn't it? Erhard House, Chronobiology and the Endocrine System. And it's not something you want to just stay awake reading all night. They get kind of boring. You're searching for the nuggets. But this was good. This was good. He says the endogenous nature of about weekly, Circaseptan rhythms is shown by their occurrence in animals kept under laboratory conditions and precluded Circaseptan periodic input. Their appearance as Circaseptan reaction pattern after noxious stimuli or introduction of an antigen and in human subjects by the observation of their free-running rhythms that are not synchronized to environmental time cues with a frequency different from the calendar week. It appears, hear this, it appears that our seventh-day week, which is found in many ancient and modern civilizations, including the three main monotheistic religions, may be an adaptation to an endogenous biological rhythm rather than the rhythm being a societally impressed phenomenon. Imagine that. The beat of life is tuned to 7. And when I cut things off of here, you know, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, start again, the 8th day. A central feature of biological time structure is the harmonic relationship, and this is, okay, I got to back up. This is Franz Hallberg. Franz Hallberg is basically, he's the leading chronobiologist in his field. I mean, there's a lot of works to his name, and you can go to his website. I don't think of what it is right now, but I can get it to you. And he's got all kinds of studies, and this was the guy that really first started coming out with the law of 7 being in your makeup. And he called it the Circaseptan, and he started really doing a lot of studies on this seventh-day pattern. And he got a lot of flack, but I mean, it's proven out over time. So he says a central feature of biological time structure is the harmonic relationships that exist among the various component frequencies. A striking aspect of this relationship is that the components themselves appear to be harmonics or subharmonics, multiples or submultiples of 7. A number that has played a disproportionately large role in human culture, myth, religion, magic, and the calendar. This guy's not a Christian. But he's seeing this, he's going, this is weird. Because like every 7 days there's a reset. And it's in the plant life, animal life, bacteria. They found that all the way down into the lowest bacterial form. A 7-day cycle. With the success, now this is Stephen Hawking. So listen to what Stephen Hawking says. I usually don't quote him on the Sabbath day, right? But even Steve, I mean, with the success of scientific theories in describing events, most people have come to believe that God allows the universe to evolve according to a set of laws and does not interfere with the universe to break these laws. However, the laws do not tell us what the universe should have looked like when it started. It would still be up to God to wind up the clockwork and choose how to start it off. So long as the universe had a beginning, we could suppose it had a creator. Duh. Wake up, dude. I'm going to send him some of this dude's work, man. Franz Hallberg. I'm going to say, hey, Stephen, have you read Franz Hallberg's work, like on the 7th day? I mean, come on, dude. It's amazing. But guess what? He did wind up the clock. He did start it off. We do have a creator, and your body is set to that synchronization. Jeremy Campbell, this is a really cool book, study. I think he actually put it in a book. I had a neat PDF of it, but it's called Winston Churchill's Afternoon Nap. You look at the title and say, what does that mean? Has nothing to do with the subject. Winston Churchill's Afternoon Nap, but it's from Jeremy Campbell. And he says this, he says, a particular function of the body may have a spectrum of rhythms with a dominant frequency that is very different from the dominant frequency of the spectrum of rhythms in another function, perhaps widely separated in space. Okay, you get that? A particular function of the body may have a spectrum of rhythms with a dominant frequency that is very different from the dominant frequency of another function, rhythms in another function, perhaps widely separated in space. Yet no matter which frequency component is the primary one in any given function, all rhythmic systems of the body probably possess an innate Circaseptan frequency, 7. So that when they cooperate to perform a specific task, which is body-wide, say an immune reaction, the reaction occurs on a weekly schedule. That schedule is a compromise between too much time and too little time. A day and a night, which is the dominant frequency in the spectrum of many routine body chores, would not be long enough to complete the complicated array of chemical and other activities that compose the immune defense reaction, and a month would be too long. But our Creator knew that because He separated it by days. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days. So He established creation on a daily pattern, right? Circadian rhythms. But then He was like, the seventh day, now the weekly restart. Circaseptan, the weekly restart. But guess what? Guess what? Here's where we're going with this. And we'll build more on this tomorrow. Our enemy knows this. Can you imagine that? That our enemies had 6,000 years to study you, human, to know how you tick, to know how to get you, to know how to get you off sync. And He's throwing so much at us to get us off sync. Daniel 7:25 said, and he shall speak greater words, Daniel 7:25, he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws. And they shall be given into His hand until time and times and a dividing of time. But the judgment shall sit, and they shall take away His dominion to consume and destroy it unto the end. And the kingdom and domain and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominion shall serve and obey Him. Can I get an hallelujah? Hallelujah. But in the meantime, He's going to be wearing out the saints. Okay? So we see that. He's going to be wearing out the saints, man. You know, Sean, you're going to have a flat, on the way to Sukkot. Your projector's going to go out, you just spend a bunch of money on. He's just trying to wear out the saints. I mean, but this is nothing. You're going to have a storm, right? You're going to have some floods. But this is nothing compared to what's coming. But guess what? We're promised if we maintain and we hold together and we stay together as a body and we stay together with Messiah, guess what? If we endure, because of Him, we overcome. He overcame. There's been a couple major, just in recent history, failed attempts to reset the clock. One of them was 1793 to 1805. The First French Republic tried to replace the 7-day week with a secular week, having rest every 10th day. They thought, we'll just change it up a little bit, and we'll just jack them all up, we'll just do it every 10th day. That attempt was a total failure. They had to totally we're going back to 7 days. The productivity went down. I mean, you can look at the studies. It just messed the country up. Well, but then Stalin comes along, and Stalin was a brainiac, and he says, okay, so from 29 to 40, Stalin's Russia set up a rotating 5-day continuous work week where 80% of the people worked while 20% rested. It failed. Production went down. You could see it in their bodies. You look at the health rates. I mean, they study this stuff out. It just failed. So the work cycles in those undertakings violated the body clock that Yah set with man. And every time you try to do that, you're gonna have failure. And that's why I believe that this law of 7 is so tied into the system. And I wish I had this on the PowerPoint for you, but the 364 solar calendar sync. It syncs with with the 24 priestly divisions. So the 364 solar calendar, it syncs with the 24 priestly divisions. So if you look at the priestly divisions, you've got 1 year of 364 days. You have 6 years, that'd be 2,184 days. So in 24 divisions, rotating throughout the 6-year period, it'd mean each priestly division would work 2 quarters each cycle for a total of 91 days, or a quarter of a 364-day year. And that's if you do a 30, 31-day clock. And I understand we're not all on the same calendar, and we're all learning. That's where I lean. I mean, I lean on the 364 days because it's divisible by 7, and that's just kind of how I lean. But because I believe in this law of 7, I believe it's synchronizing. He put everything in synchronization for a reason. And so he's trying to bring us back into synchronization. So if you look at 24 courses times 6 years, it gives you 144 courses. Well, there's 144,000, which is the fullness of the 12 tribes of Israel about to be unleashed, right? It all means something. They all line up. And we could spend all day talking about the 7s, 4s, You want to? We could talk about the 7-day menstrual cycle in your body. We could talk about 7 times around Jericho. I mean, it's everywhere. If you look, it's everywhere. Why? Why is it 7? We could talk about 70. We could talk about 70 elders, 72, the 70 up the mountain. I mean, all these things are, 10 times 7, 70, fullness, 70 times 7, Yeshua, 70 times 7. It all means something. We'll get there, not today. So check this out. The septan of the spiritual priesthood. Leviticus 24:7, there was a septan built into the priesthood. And it's Leviticus 24, starting in 7. It says, "And thou shalt take fine flour and bake 12 cakes thereof. 2/10 deals shall be in 1 cake, and thou shalt set them in 2 rows, 6 on a row upon the pure table of Yahweh." And 7, "And thou shalt put pure frankincense upon each row, that it may be on the bread for a memorial, even an offering made by fire unto Yahweh. Every Sabbath he shall set in it order before Yahweh continually, being taken from the children of Israel by an everlasting covenant. And it shall be Aaron's and his sons, and they shall eat it in the holy place, for it is most holy unto him of the offerings of Yahweh made by fire, a perpetual statute." So every 7th day, Yah had the priest come in with new showbread, put that on the table, and take the week-old showbread that's been in his presence, and they ate it. They ingested it. Do you think the 7th day presence of Yahweh matters? I mean, so physically, that Levitical priesthood, they're not doing that. There's no temple. Guess what? You are the temple of the Holy Spirit, and we are the royal priesthood, and we're here on the 7th day, and we're sharing bread together.
David, right?
Like David. Just like David. We're sharing it with everybody, aren't we? We're sharing his bread. It's so amazing, but we say that septan, that's 7 in the spiritual priesthood as well. So 1 John 5:19, 21. Now we start talking about some of the ways that the enemy tries to work us over and wear the saints out. And you start seeing how much this society is all against you because it hates your God. It's really hard for me to really love anything in my society. I mean, it's really hard because I've done the research. Music, entertainment, Hollywood. I mean, it's just sick. Starting off, 1 John 5, starting in 19, says, "We know that we are of Elohim, and the whole world lies under the sway of the wicked one." "And we know that the Son of God hath come and has given us understanding, that we may know him who is true, and we are in him who is true, and his Son, Yeshua. This is the true God and eternal life. Little children, keep yourselves from idols." Get it?
Yeah.
Because what do idols do? They get you to the sway. We're going to talk about this more tomorrow. Because tomorrow we're talking about modern day Baal worship. And how the world is under the sway of the enemy. Man, do you hear that? Hear by the Spirit, hear the word. And I wanted to open up in prayer. Let's just pray real quick. Father, I pray these words, Father, that you deliver today. Your word will not fall on deaf ears. Pray that your word, Father, will be delivered by your Spirit. They'll produce life, conviction, repentance, anything that you want produced, Father. They won't be tossed on the wayside. They won't be on stony ground. But Father, they'll bring fruit for the kingdom. Fruit for the kingdom. So I pray that you open our ears, give us spiritual eyes to see what the Spirit's saying in this hour. In Yeshua's name. We know that we are of God, and the whole world lies under the sway of the wicked one. And we know that the Son of God has come, and he has given us an understanding. Because if we don't know that, guess what we do? We get Romans 1. But we know. Why do we know? Because we're keeping the Shabbat, and we're in sync. So if we're in sync on the 7th day, every 7th day, we're staying in sync with the Creator of all things. Why? So that we will know who is Yah, who sanctifies us. Because what happens if we forget that we're sanctified? It's real easy to be back into the idols, back with your idol worship. And guess what? You guys are all still worshiping idols. And I am too. The goal is to really be pure before the Father and ask Him to reveal it to you. That's our goal. So if you hear nothing else this week, I'm not going to tell you I have all my idols out. You don't either. If I was a betting man, I would bet you we all have idols in our lives. And they're so subtle. They're so subtle. Read 1st and 2nd Kings and look at all the stories of all the kings. They're so subtle. And they trip you up so easy. And there's such a mixture. But we know Him that's true. We've got to stay with Him that's true. We've got to keep His calendar. We've got to keep His appointments. We've got to stay there. Even though the world doesn't want you to. Even though the world's saying, come do this. It's so fun. Come do this. You'll be number one. Come do this. We're doing it. Come do this. Everybody does it. Can't you just do this? I know it's a Saturday for you, but come on. I mean, it's just another, come on, really? I mean, it's just, you do Saturday, I do Sunday. Come on, really? This is true, little children. Keep yourself from idols. So I just did this little thing for you, all right? That's a pendulum clock. That's my way of doing a pendulum clock. And I've said this before because I mean, this is just so, it meant so much to my life when I found this information out. I want to share it with you again if you haven't heard it. The law of entrainment. Have you heard of the law of entrainment? Well, guess what the enemy has? And he's entraining you, probably without you even realizing it, on a daily basis. So the law of entrainment was first brought about by Christian Huygens. He was an important physicist. He created the term entrainment when he noticed that two pendulum clocks close together had come to swing in the same rhythm. Later experiments duplicated the process. The object with the faster vibration slows down and the slower one speeds up. So you've got two different sized pendulum clocks. It doesn't matter. You can put 10 of them in a room on the same wall, all different shapes and sizes, and they'll eventually sink into the same sway. It's called entrainment. Frequency. The explanation of this phenomenon is that very small amounts of energy are transferred between the two objects when their vibrations and frequencies are not the same. The energy transfer forces the two objects to start vibrating at the same speed. So you've got large clock, small clock, and over time, because of frequencies patterns, that's the way life is. You're gonna kind of be in sync to your environment. What environment do you have? What's the environment in your home? What's the environment in your workplace? What's the environment in your house on the Sabbath day? What's the environment where you're on your car? What's the environment? What does the enemy try to do for your entertainment? What environment does he try to put you into? Because guess what? He's syncing you to the clock of this world, or the pattern of this world. The enemy knows it, and they've been doing studies on binaural beats. In 1839, the phenomenon known as binaural beats was discovered by the German researcher H.W. Dove. The term binaural beat frequencies describes a neuroacoustical phenomena that takes place when the brain perceives one tone in one ear with a slight detuned tone in the other. As a means of measuring the difference between these two tones, the brain creates a third tone that is known as a binaural two-ear auditory beat. Yah made your brain amazing, but the enemy knows it. By listening through stereo headphones to two sound frequencies that differ by a small number of hertz, the brain hears the difference between tones and will naturally speed up or slow down to match the difference, naturally. For example, if you played a 410 hertz tone in your left ear while playing a 400 hertz tone in your right, your brain would recognize the 10 hertz difference and begin to adjust your brainwave frequency to 10 hertz. It's crazy. So, when I was 10, 11 years old, my father had every Jimi Hendrix album known to man. I mean, he had all the Beatles and all them. I mean, that's what I grew up on. So I'm a kid in the 80s, and all the kids are listening to, Madonna and whatever, and I'm going to school singing Led Zeppelin. They didn't know what I was talking about. But I remember laying between the speakers, listening to, I won't give you the name, but one of Jimi Hendrix songs would move between between, and I remember laying there and just been like, I mean, no wonder by 4 years later I was smoking pot, doing all kinds of crazy things as a good Christian kid, man, good Christian church kid. But I was being entrained. And it was right in my house. I mean, the world system was all around me, and I was being entrained. It didn't matter that I went to church on Sunday and learned, Jesus loves me. It didn't matter because the enemy's beat was stronger. And eventually I moved to it. You've heard of the Pied Piper, right? The Pied Piper. It's not just a little funny story. The enemy knows it. The Pied Piper is a sad story because it still happens. And many people that you know, maybe you have been guilty of it as well, follow the Pied Piper as he plays the tune. Right? The piper calls the tune. Piper's calling the tune. Where are you following? You following the piper? There was a group called Abba, or I guess however they pronounce their name. They try to, it's a mockery of our God. But they made I'm trying to remember what it was called, a vinyl, but not a CD, it was years ago. Record, thank you. Called Super Trooper, the Piper. This was a totally, I believe in the Illuminati. You might not. It's fine. I do. I know what their work is on the earth, and it's all satanic. But these people were bought, and a lot of musicians have they have sold their souls to the enemy. It's proof. I can show it to you. It's proof. These folks did, and you can get fame and fortune, right? It wouldn't be a temptation to Yeshua when the enemy brought him and said, "You can give all the kingdoms of this world, just worship me." Would that be a temptation if he couldn't have done it? No. So he has the power to say, you know what, Angela, you can sing pretty good. I'll make you sing like an angel, a bird. Just come serve me. I'll give you everything this can, but it's going to cost you your soul. But in this life, hey, Joel Osteen, you'll have your best life now. Right? But I wanted to tell you this. This is the Piper lyrics. He gave them a dream. He seduced everybody in the land. The fire in his eyes and the fear was a weapon in his hand. So they let him play, and he played their minds away. We're all following a strange melody. We're all summoned by a tune, and we're all following the Piper, and we dance beneath the moon. We're all following the Piper, and we dance beneath the moon. For him, we dance beneath the moon. It was for the Antichrist, the Anti-Messiah. And they in some of the research I did on that band particularly, they were Luciferians, man. They worshiped, they believed. And most Luciferians believe that Satan is going to be the real true God, and they're going to worship him. I remember coming into Hebrew Roots and taking my family out one night because it was a new moon celebration, and we were on the moon calendar and worshiping at dark. And so we wanted to go out and dance around the moon. And so we went out and turned the lights on, had to turn the car on. We looked like a bunch of crazy people. The lights are on. We're at this park in Tulsa. I'm blowing the shofar. The girls are dancing in a circle. We're all dancing. The moon's out, and we're like, people are going, they're in witchcraft. I can imagine that. We would look like a bunch of witches. Guys, we had to repent. I'm not kidding you, because the enemy is trying to put everybody into a sway. I don't care what denomination or whatever you think you are. There's no immunity unless you totally stay in sync with the Creator of all things. And don't be deceived. Here's a quote. If you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. That was Tesla. So, I can't show you these pictures, but who's done studies on frequencies, like the 432 hertz tunings and the 440 hertz tuning? Okay, it's amazing. You'll find pictures of these kaleidoscope images under the 432 hertz tuning. It's beautiful. It's harmonious. And then when they move over to the 440 hertz, it's just like what? Who? What? Dissonance, thank you. That's a good word. Yeah, dissonance, yeah. So, most music worldwide has been tuned to 440 hertz since the international standards, ISO, endorsed it in '53. The recent rediscoveries of the vibratory, oscillatory nature of the universe indicate that this contemporary international concert pitch standard may generate an unhealthy effect on antisocial behavior in the consciousness of human beings. Well, go figure. A 432 hertz, known as Verdi's A, is an alternative tuning that is mathematically consistent with the universe. Music based on 432 hertz transmits beneficial healing energy because it is a pure tone of math fundamental to nature. I'm not saying I'll buy all that, okay? But there is, if it's tuned into the heartbeat of heaven, and there's a reality of all this, then why in 1940 the United States introduced a 440 hertz worldwide, and finally in '53 became the ISO 16 standard. That's all I want to know. Why? because I really believe that they're trying to get us into entrainment, to train your mind and my mind to follow the beat and the sway of the enemy, of the wicked one. Here's a quote by Dr. Leonard Horowitz from his book, Musical Cult Control. Musical Cult Control. The music industry features this imposed frequency that is herding populations into greater aggression, psychosocial agitation, and emotional distress, predisposing people to physical illness. But it doesn't matter. I don't listen to the words, Dad. Okay.
What was that guy's name again?
That was Dr. Leonard Horowitz. My dad used to say, it was funny because I could listen to Led Zeppelin, but like if I listened to like Madonna, right, it's like, that's the enemy's music. I'm like, well, but man, this guy sold his soul to Satan. Don't say that in this house, okay? It's just like, so I believe this. I believe that the enemy I'm a conspiracy theorist. Right? Because the enemy he's a conspiracy to destroy you. He wants to kill us and take us all out. And so he's doing a really good job. I mean, that's why at this Sukkot, representing several states, we've got 80 people. This is the heartbeat of heaven, y'all. Where's everybody at? So I believe that the enemy has this musical cult control, and he gave it. My mom, and my mom probably watched it. Maybe she'll watch this. Don't get mad, Mom, but just it is what it is. So my mom told me stories about when the Beatles came to town. So my grandfather was like, Assembly of God, you're not listening to that mess of devil's music. My mom, please, Daddy, please. It's Satan's music. You got to listen to the Beatles, man. And look at. I'm just saying, could it be? Look what happened to her son. Could it be? The enemy has many weapons, and this picture is just talking about EMF. So cell phones, appliances, collectors, cell towers, collectors, gas, hydro, baby monitors, water, routers, cordless phones. The list goes on and on that are affecting your brain waves and my brain waves. Why? Because the enemy wants to get you off sync. He wants to get you in disarray, dissonance. He wants to just get you out of kilter. He does a good job. Can you imagine what's going to happen in this country when we have? See, I think Puerto Rico was a microcosm of the macro that's coming. When we're all going to be out of electricity we'll never get it back. Maybe. There's people calling for Puerto Rico to abandon the island. That's how bad it is. They're saying, just leave the island. You got to go, because they haven't seen nothing yet. The sickness, you got 108-degree temperatures, no AC, 16% of the nation's diabetic. Think of all the issues. Hospitals are shutting down. They can't keep things going. They're trying to ship the sickest out of the country. It's a bad situation. But you think about what I believe our enemy has planned is on a grander scale. When people lose their idols, man, when your TV has to be off because you have no power, when you can't listen to your beatbox because you have no power, what are you going to do with yourself when you haven't trained yourself in the Word? When you haven't trained yourself to be still and know that He is God? What are you going to do with yourself when you're just so used to all these frequencies all about you that all of a sudden it's still? People are going to be freaking out. Okay? Think of all the people on medication. There are people on medication everywhere. Think of all the people that are on antidepressants. What when they can't get their antidepressants any longer? They're going to be depressed. And it's going to be everywhere. Yeah, another story. Electromagnetic mind-altering technology. Have you ever heard of that? It's called ELF. This is government. Terrell might have heard of this. Electromagnetic mind-altering technology. ELF waves, for short. This is I found this in a report from '82, and according to a 1982 Air Force review of biotechnology, ELF has a number of potential military uses, right? I bet it does. Including dealing with terrorist groups. Those Christians, man. Those royal priesthood, they've got to watch them. Including terrorist groups, crowd control, controlling breaches of security at military installations, and anti-personnel techniques and tactical warfare. The same report states Hoffman's not making it up. Government report. I have a friend of mine, he was a customer of mine, 8-year Delta Force Ranger. He said, Mike, the government has 20 years on anything you've ever seen. Anything you've seen that you think technology is, they have 20 years of things you've never seen. They're 20 years ahead of you. Electromagnetic, so this was 82, y'all. 82. Electromagnetic systems would be used to produce mild to severe psychological disruption or perceptual distortion or disorientations. They are silent, and countermeasures to them may be difficult to develop.
Wasn't it Gaddafi or something that the U.S. military shot rock music at him until he surrendered?
I haven't heard that, but I mean,
It was like in the 80s or 90s.
Really?
is that truth? Really?
Yeah, they blasted
They shot rock music at Gaddafi?
rock music at him.
Man, why you tell me that before? That'd been awesome to put on here. That's good, man. Because, I mean, I would do that. I mean, that'd be a way to take care of the enemy, wouldn't it? I'm just going to shoot rock music at them. But we've got kids and people just, they do that all the time anyway. They don't get it. It's a weapon.
You gotta play praise music to the enemy.
That's right. That's right. Wow. Guys, if it wasn't, I mean, 82, they've had a lot of years to mess with this. In well-conducted blind studies, Professor Magda Havas at Trent University in Peterborough, Ontario, found significant links between dirty electricity in homes and schools and diseases like multiple sclerosis, diabetes, and asthma, ADD and ADHD in children. Havas also found a link between cordless digital phones and the changes in the heart rate of 40% of subjects tested. Have you ever heard of the Sabbath-keeping bees? So there's an article I can send you. There's a Brazilian bees, deep in the rainforest is a community that there is no cell towers, there's no radiation, there's no EMF, and they found these bees that actually are on a 7-day cycle, like we talked about, Circaseptan, and they rest on this 7th day. They're not outside the beehive. And they've observed it, they filmed it, they didn't believe it. The natives took them out there because they kind of farm them for their honey, and they said they don't work on the 7th day. And they brought them out there and said, look, and there was nothing going on because they're all inside of there on the Sabbath day. Brazil. Sabbath-keeping bees, and look it up, you can find it. So you think about cell phones, Wi-Fi radiation, and the killing of the bees. In 2009 study, Favre placed this guy's, Favre, I don't know his first name, I've just got the study on naturalsociety.com, placed cell phones in a honeybee hive and observed what happened when the phones were active, inactive, powered down, or ringing. His findings that bees weren't bothered by inactive phones or those in standby mode. However, the bees exposed to ringing phones or ones that were active became confused and signaled each other to leave the hive. The confusion and other behavior didn't stop when the phone stopped ringing. It continued for 12 hours after the phone went inactive again. In one experiment, it was found that when a mobile phone was kept near a beehive, it resulted in a collapse of the colony in 5 to 10 days, with the worker bees failing to return home, leaving the hive with just queens, eggs, and hive-bound immature bees. Collapse of the society. Don't you understand how much the enemy has planned the collapse of your society? He's had a long time to plan it, and he's doing a good job. So even a lot of the Christian community took off with this law of attraction. You've heard of the law of attraction? See, the enemy knows psychology, and he tries to teach Christian psychiatrists and psychologists how to handle y'all's people. It doesn't make any sense. But they actually use brainwave entrainment. You can actually buy CDs that are brainwave entraining CDs, where it's different than subliminal. It's giving you messages like subliminal messages in your subconscious mind, but it's working on frequency difference. Okay? It's entraining your brain. And I don't know exactly how it works. It's crazy to me. But that this Law of Attraction book says is in altering the brain's electrical activity by using rhythmic sensory stimulation, such as pulses or sound or light. When the brain is stimulated by an audible rhythm, it will begin to follow the frequency of the stimulus. For example, in African tribal ceremonies, drums are used to produce a rhythm. The brain waves of those at the ceremonies will begin to synchronize with the frequency of the drum over time. This response is called frequency following response. I did it at the Assembly of God Church all the time. Sing this song over and over, over and over, listen to the beat over and over until you're going to have a Holy Spirit experience fall on the floor, and then wiggle or whatever. So what does this all have to do with the law of attraction? They say, if you recall, reprogramming the subconscious mind is a key to replacing the negative junk in your mind with more positive thoughts. This then becomes a key to attracting more of the things you desire in your life. Can't you hear Satan all over that? He's just saying, you want what you want? I know how to give it to you. Come follow my beat. You know, whatever that beat that is. He's got all kinds of beats. So you're either going to follow the beat. That's why we sing the Psalms, right? If you sing the Psalms, I mean, it's pretty safe. I mean, if you sing the Psalms, you're singing, putting Yah's word in you. So I want to put his stuff in, right? Because guess what, right? Garbage in, garbage out. So I want to make sure I'm filling myself in my vessel with his word, his music, his tunes, his things, his word. And we're still learning. We're still coming out of Babylon, y'all. I mean, there's still stuff. I mean, I mentioned this, I think, at Shavuot, but we were like, let's just find it. Maybe a show the kids can watch, right? So they were like, well, how about a good Western? I'm like, okay. So we found like a good PG Western, and everybody died every time. I mean, every time someone got shot. Every time, because people were getting killed. It's a Western. And it was like, it was vengeful. It felt good. I'm like, that's just jacking my man up, because it's trying to entrain me to be that kind of guy. But that's not like Yeshua. So anything that's not making you more like him is making you more like the harlot, guys. That's why we need to wake up. So I don't want to learn Satan's way. I don't want to care about. I was in sales, and I had a big sales organization I managed, and so every year we'd get to go off and we'd get to learn all this voodoo, and it'd be like, hey, here's how you're going to do it, and you're going to do this, and it's going to be good, and we'd go back and teach it to the guys and gals, and we're going to increase our sales because we're going to learn human psychology, and we're going to know how people operate, and we're going to use that to our advantage, and we're going to close more sales. And so we learned all this positive PMA, positive mental speech, and positive mental attitude, and we, you get what you say, and we just all this stuff. It would just be this mantra around the office. It was crazy. And what was wild is our sales were going up, and I made more money. And it was like there is this little law, because guess what? The enemy knows how to get you. And for me, that might have been the hook that he was trying to put in me. The love of money is the root of all evil. The love of it. So, he can give you this little success. He can give you success. The things that are in this world are dead to me. They mean nothing. But they used to mean something. And so when the enemy's like going, hey, you want this new car? Here you go, son. I'm like, ooh, wow. I want to be somebody. But Yah's way, I want Yah's way. That's why in Romans 12:2, it shows us Yah's way. Not the way of the enemy. Romans 12:2, and be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of Elohim. Isn't that what you want? To be tuned into the Creator's, to be in sync with his timepiece in heaven, to know what his will is. So Abba releases us from slavery. He released Israel from slavery, and he synced them to his frequency. And we won't read it for time's sake, but Exodus 16:25, you've probably noticed this before. It's called Manna Shabbat. But before he ever gave the law, before he ever gave the covenant at Sinai, he gave them his Sabbath. Exodus 16. And he says that. Exodus 16 starting in 25. And Moses said, eat that today, for today is a Sabbath unto Yahweh. And you can read the rest of it later. And then Yahweh, it's a cool story. Verse 30, it just says, so the people rested on the Sabbath day, on the seventh day. So the people rested on the seventh day. So Yahweh was sharing, what's the first thing you want to do as a good daddy? Your kids have been in slavery. You want to give them jubilee and rest. And so he's like, I can see Yahweh being giddy about it. I'm not even going to wait till we get to Sinai. I'm giving you the Sabbath day. I'm going to give it to you now, right now. And he's thinking they're all going to be happy about it. And they still jack it up. He's just wanting to get them back in sync. Exactly. I'm going to get them back in sync. I'm getting ready to bring them back in. I'm going to make a covenant with them. We're going to be married together. It's time to get these people out of that working 7-day mindset, being like the Egyptians. I'm going to get them into my heartbeat. We're going to rest on the seventh day together. And you can see how the story goes. And then he brings them out, and then he delivers that in the Ten Commandments as well. But a couple more things. We're almost finished up. So if you look at Jeremiah 17:15, the Sabbath is a big deal. And there's a few different instances. So Judah's last warning, and later in this week, we're going to do a two-part, this week it won't be so long, but there'll be a two-part teaching on Judah's, it's called, what do I name it? Jeremiah's warning. It's Jeremiah's warning, a parallel, an American parallel of Judah, ancient Judah. And so I believe that we're on a same parallel course as Judah was. And Jeremiah comes in and he says, behold, in 17:15, behold, they say unto me, where is the word of Yah? Let it come now. As for me, I've not hastened from being a pastor to follow thee, neither have I desired the woeful day. Thou knowest, he's crying out to the Father, that which came out of my lips was right before thee. Be not a terror unto me. Thou art my hope in the day of evil. Let them be confounded that persecute me, and let them be not confounded. Be them confounded. Let them be dismayed, but let not me be dismayed. Bring upon them the day of evil, and destroy them with double destruction. Thus saith Yahweh unto me. Here was Yahweh's, he listened to it, and he says, okay, go and stand in the gate of the children of the people, whereby the kings of Judah come in, and by which they go out, and in all the gates of Jerusalem, and say unto them, hear ye the word of Yah, ye kings of Judah, and all the inhabitants of Jerusalem that enter into these gates. Thus saith Yahweh, take heed to yourselves, and bear no burden on the Sabbath day, nor bring it in by the gates of Jerusalem. Neither carry for a burden out of your houses on the Sabbath day. Neither do you any work, but hallow ye the Sabbath day, as I commanded your fathers, but they obeyed not, neither inclined their ear, but they made their neck stiff, that they might not hear nor receive instruction. Well, I mean, you can read what happens next, later on in Jeremiah. But I find that very interesting that Yahweh says, okay, here's the last warning I'm going to give them. The Sabbath day. And they still didn't hear. What's he saying in this hour? Come back. Come back to the Sabbath. Come back and get in sync. Come into my time. Let me spend time with you, because you know what? You're going to get to know me. The more time you spend with me, you're going to get to know me. Don't say you know me when you don't spend time with me. When I've created an appointment day for you and you miss your appointment, don't say that you serve me. Come spend time with me. The Sabbath restoration is tied into restoring and raising the foundations of many generations in Isaiah 58. Isaiah 58:12. And they that shall be of thee shall build the old waste places. What are we doing right now? We're keeping the Sabbath day at Sukkot. Thou shalt raise up the foundations of many generations, and thou shalt be called the repairer of the breach. Sherry, you repairer of the breach. The restorer of paths to dwell in. You are a restorer of paths to dwell in, Leslie. If thou turn away thy foot from the Sabbath, from doing thy pleasure on my holy day, and call the Sabbath a delight, and the holy of Yah honorable, and shalt honor him, not doing thine own ways, nor finding thine own pleasure, nor speaking thine own words, then shalt thou delight thyself in Yahweh. Did you hear that? What is the then there? It's conditional. Then shalt thou delight thyself in Yah, and I will cause thee to ride upon the high places of the earth, and feed thee with the heritage of Jacob thy father, for the mouth of Yahweh hath spoken it. We will ride the high places, guys. It doesn't matter what's going to happen. When the whirlwind comes, we ain't seen nothing yet. Harvey, Irma, Maria, dropping a bucket. But he promises we'll ride the high places of the earth. I'm not sure what that looks like yet, but there's several scriptures, and as I read them, like he gives us hinds feet, you know, and we're like up on the high places. Well, I can see the men of this world, you know, kings hiding under the rocks. They're going into crevices and the craters they've made all over the earth. They've dug all kinds of military bases all over the earth to hide underground, and they're deceived. And the very God they serve is going to kill them. Kronos, talking about Kronos. Kronos is a Greek god, but Kronos ate his children. They actually worshipped a Greek god that ate his children. Satan's going to eat them. He's Kronos. But they think they're going to be saved. And I picture this. I picture the floods and the earthquakes and things happening, and those underground tunnels and things just going boom, no escape. But his people, up on the high places, just riding high on the, I mean, like Noah in the ark, up on the high waves, riding them, baby. Okay? I know what it's going to look like, Sherry. Sherry's like, how are we going to build that, Mike? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? We're going to build something? I don't know. He's going to know. I'm waiting on the knock on the door. I'm waiting on the knock on the door from the big angel that says, it's time. Come on, now. Okay. What did Nehemiah do to protect the Sabbath day? Because guess what? After, you know, Americans love their revivals. So we all talk about, we're going to have a revival, big revival. Well, guess what? Revival comes when you get your teeth knocked in. So after you've had your teeth knocked in, now there's time to revive. Because you're going to be revived because you're almost dead. So let's get talking about this great last day world revival, because we're going to have the great last day world teeth kicking in first. Then revival, for those who are trained by it. So you see what Nehemiah did when he comes back after being in 70 years in Babylon. He comes back in after Jeremiah warned them about the Sabbath, and they wouldn't listen, and they went off for 70 years as slaves because they had a harlot mentality. He brings them back in, and now Nehemiah gets serious, and he goes, guess what? 13:15, Nehemiah 13:15. He says, in those days saw I in Judah some treading wine presses on the Sabbath, and bringing in sheaves, and lading asses, as also wine, grapes, and figs, and all manner of burdens, which they brought into Jerusalem on the Sabbath day. And I testified against them in the day wherein they sold victuals. There dwelt men of Tyre also therein. These dirty dogs came in, they brought fish and all manner of ware, and they sold on the Sabbath unto the children of Judah and in Jerusalem. Then I contended with the nobles of Judah, and I said unto them, what evil thing is that you've done? And you profane the Sabbath day. Did not your fathers thus, and did not our God bring all this evil upon us and upon this city? Yet ye bring more wrath upon Israel by profaning the Sabbath. And it came to pass that when the gates of Jerusalem began to be dark before the Sabbath, I commanded the gates should be shut, and I charged that they should not be opened until after the Sabbath. And some of my servants said at the gates that there should be no burden be brought in on the Sabbath day. So the merchants and sellers of all kind of ware lodged with Jerusalem once or twice. Then I testified against them and said unto them, why lodge ye about the wall? If you do so again, Jack, I'll lay my hands on you. From that time, he didn't say Jack, that's just me. And I will command, for I'll lay my hands on you. And he's probably a big dude, man. I'm going to lay my hands on you, man. You don't be breaking the Sabbath day. Okay. From that time forth came they no more on the Sabbath, and I commanded the Levites that they should cleanse themselves, that they should come and keep the gates to sanctify the Sabbath day. Remember me, O God, for concerning this also, and spare me according to the greatness of mercy. Who are the keepers of the gates today? The royal priesthood. You are. Levites aren't doing it. You're all doing it. If we're doing it. Isaiah 28:5. We are the gatekeepers. It says, in that day shall Yahweh of hosts be for a crown of glory. And that day is that day. You know the day coming. That day. In that day, for a crown of glory and for a diadem of beauty unto the residue of his people. The residue of his people. Not the throngs of people that have just come in after a big revival. The residue. And for a spirit of judgment to him that sitteth in judgment. And guess what? And for strength to them that turn the battle to the gate. It's you and I. We're turning the battle to the gate. No, not in this house. Not this day. We're not doing that today. Not in this house. Not this day. We're turning the battle at the gate. The battle's every day trying to get in your gate. Every day the enemy wants in your gates. And if he can get in your gates on the Sabbath day, he can divide you and divide your family. And he's done a good job of it. He's blinded the world to the appointment of Yahweh. We're battling at the gates, right? Because we're going to the Jubilee of all Jubilees, y'all. And so, we're going somewhere with this. We're finished up with this section, and where we're going tomorrow is going to be, and I know some of you can't stay all week. We're going to videotape it, watch the end, because we're going somewhere. So we're talking about the frequency. Who wants to stay in the frequency of the Creator? I do. I mean, that's the only place I want to be. You can call me a fool, hate my guts, do whatever you want to do, take away my last dollar. But as long as I'm there with my door shut in his time, that's where I want to be. Tomorrow we're going to talk about how he's duped the world with modern day Baal worship. We'll talk about really what idolatry is about and why he works so hard to get us to be idolaters. It'll be good. I wish it could be, So for you guys that are only staying for the weekend, it's going to be like, man, Michael's leaving us on a downer, man. But we're going somewhere. This was designed to go through Sukkot.